Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We have another spreadsheet type guide video today, and this of course is going to be on the new Eternity of Pain acceptance quest along with the volume 3 Carina's challenges, 6 new objectives that are sort of tag based, and you can bring in 3 champions with these tags to get these done in the Eternity of Pain acceptance quest. It's a really cool piece of content, and obviously the rewards are quite good. There's a lot of loot in there, but particularly there's a 4 to 5 6-star gem, the first one we've seen in the game through gameplay, and I know a lot of people are going to want to dive right in and try to get their first rank 5. But before doing that, I do suggest that you do a little bit of planning, and that's what this is for. So this guide, I do want to give a quick caveat that I have not done any paths yet, so this is still theoretical, but the point of this guide is to do some pre-planning. If you're looking for a guide for somebody with experience who's already done the quest, I can tell you for sure that like Karate Mike and FinTech and a few other people that have YouTube channels have already 100% it, so there may be some content coming in and they may be able to give you some tips and tricks about the actual quest. But for me, the way I boiled this down was I wanted to go back in time because Eternity of Pain started in March of 2022, which was quite a long time ago, and I've forgotten a lot of these fights, who I used. So I really tried to boil down the fights into just a couple sentences in this column here, where, what are the things you need to know so that you can kind of digest the pages of text that are the nodes for these. And then I also have a little bit of a Nameless Thanos guide on the bottom as well. So this guide is for all kinds of different people. If you're not Paragon yet and you just want to get an initial clear and bring in whatever champions you want, like Hercules or whatever, then you can still use this first column of how to fight so that you go in and you don't just like forget to read the nodes and die and waste a revive. Sometimes just getting a little refresher on the fight is really helpful, and then you can pick any of these columns to just write in the champions that you want to use. It can still be helpful that way. Now, if you are sort of a whale and you have like every single rank 4 of tag champions here or something like that, and you just want to go in, like bring your most highly ranked champions that are the most OP and just kind of like revive through it, you can use this as well, because again, you don't want to be going into the fight completely blind. Even if you have Hercules for those first 4 fights, you kind of want to know what's going on so that you can minimize your item usage. So again, this first column is great, but obviously if you are more like me and you have limited resources and you're a little bit of a scrub of a player and you want to really lock this thing down, you can fully use the spreadsheet, read the how to fight, and then go into each of these tags and really think about your teams, do a little bit of theory crafting, make sure that you have all the bases covered, and have a great time. So the structure of this video from here, I'm going to give some general tips about the quest, then we're going to talk about the spreadsheet itself, and then finally, so it doesn't go on too long, we're just going to plan one of the lanes for my roster, and I think the easiest one for me right now is going to be the robot one. And then lastly, before we get started, there will be a spreadsheet link in the description of this video. I also have an EOP playlist. I do have some solos of some of the previous fights. You may not be using my specific counters, but it will kind of give you a reminder of the fights. And then lastly, make sure that you go over to Cat Murdock's Twitter. If you're watching this close to the drop of this content, just yesterday she posted some amazing PDFs of the content. It's got all the defenders and the nodes, as well as the rewards and pictures of all the tag champions. I personally am going to be referencing that a lot as we move forward. So first of all, just some general tips. I kind of wrote it here in the green. Basically, it's important to fully read the nodes yourself before entering. That's like the last resort thing that you need to do before jumping in, because I didn't write every single thing down. So like for example, I'm trying to think. Like some of these have nodes that I just didn't write about. Like for example, Icarus, I wrote don't parry, but the reason is because when you stun him, he gets, a fury, which makes him go unstoppable. So it's like, yeah, don't do that. But like, you should probably know why and kind of know exactly what's going on in the fight. Maybe there's some kind of immunity or something that that I forgot to write. So definitely still read the nodes if you can, double check your work. The other important thing is that they allowed a champ choice node in the middle after the first 4 fights. So you can bring an untagged champion for the first 4 fights. I'm seeing a lot of people just go straight up Hercules for the first 4 fights and then swapping him out. It's a really sort of fast and relatively painless way to do half of the quest. But just know that after you swap, your team must match all the tags to get the rewards. So you can't go the opposite way and like add Hercules. When you beat Thanos, you have to only have tagged champions. And then finally, the way this works, there's 2 paths, right? There's right and left. The left path starts with Hercules. So if you're planning, you're only going to write in your champions from Hercules down to Dragon Man. Then we've got this little divider. And then the other path is the Dormammu to Penny one. I think most people are finding the Dormammu path to be a little bit easier because the final 4 are a little bit better when you have to only use the tag champions than like Modok, Blade, Terex, Dragon Man, which are the final 4 of the left path. And then we do have this swap node in the middle, which is going to sort of help you remember like, hey, get rid of that Hercules and move on. All right, so now there are all these tags. There's Robot, Dimensional Beings, Thunderbolts, Brotherhood of Mutants, A-Force, Alpha Flight, and Spider-Verse heroes. Again, check on Cat Murdock's graphics so that you can get a nice visual representation of them. I'm going to briefly go down on the fights, and then we're going to plan my robot path and then kind of wrap this thing up. So Hercules, he was the first Eternity of Pain fight, or he was in one of the first ones, I think, actually. I'm kind of making that up, but I remember he was pretty early. Actually, Crossbones was the first, so just forget everything I just said. Hercules was a long time ago. We'll keep it that way. And he goes periodically unblockable and indestructible. There's not really anything you can do about it because it's passive. You also are going to be getting concussions on yourself. So there's kind of 2 ways to deal with this. If you stay aggressive, he's not going to be gaining power because he has the node where if he holds block, he gains power. But you will be getting these concussions on you. So if you have abilities you need to use, then you should probably be spamming special ones to remove the concussions. But also when you knock him down, he goes stun immune. So you do have to kind of keep that in mind that, you know, when you knock him down, you have to deal with stun immunity. So some people might want to just hit him normally for a while. And then when the concussions get kind of bad, throw a special one or something like that. Overall, anybody can technically take Hercules. You just have to get some good RNG and make sure he doesn't like bring himself to a special 3 and destroy you, and watch out for the unblockable. Now for Havoc, the way I played Havoc is to basically parry everything. Parry the specials, parry, you can't really parry his heavy attack too easily, but you can parry all his hits, everything, because what happens is when you have an armor up, you dex, it turns into a true strike if you get a precision buff. So you can lose the armor if you dex the specials too much. So you just got to be careful of that. If you don't have an armor up, doing well-timed blocks is going to give you an armor. And then from there, it's just kind of playing regular Havoc. Now, Warlock should be like in red because he is a potential run ender if you go into this fight without a specific counter, because he has crit me with your best shot and power shield. And if you know anything about Warlock, when he has an armor, your specials cannot crit. So it's like only do damage with crit, only do damage with specials. Specials can't crit. Oh no, right? So basically you need a nullify or armor break champion to get rid of that armor. And then it also has a node where if you intercept, it gives you guaranteed crits. So you're going to want to remove the armor, land an intercept, throw a big special. That's kind of how you play him. It's a pretty fun fight. Anybody with those abilities can take it on. You can't just Hercules this fight unless if you have the synergy that gives him an armor break. Just, you know, good piece of information. Nick Fury is another one that almost anybody can take. He's got a node where you want to push him to special 2 and hit his block a little bit, which puts these tiny bleeds on you that you can willpower heal off of. But when you have debuffs on yourself, he doesn't lose power. So you can just bait a ton of special 2s while he's sort of power locked at special 2. And then he gets a true power lock. So you can bait a special 2 and just go ham into him. The one thing to remember is clap back is on this node, which means if you apply a debuff that you're not immune to, it's going to reflect back on you. This is why Human Torch was so viable for this fight, is because he kept putting the incinerates back on himself and ramping up his damage. But obviously, if you are using Apocalypse or something, and you put a bleed on him, or I mean, more like if you put a poison on him, the poison will reflect on you, and that will be a bad time, just as an example. Murdock has a way to turn off his auto block, but it requires Incinerate or Shock. I think that's going to be pretty tricky to make this work with these tags. So this is a potentially ugly fight if you don't have an auto block counter. He also has, I think it's powerful from afar. I just remember he gains a lot of power, but Tranquility will reduce his power to 0 every once in a while. Also, if you heavy him, it has the node where you need to throw a special quickly. So I would recommend trying not to heavy him unless if you have a special ready to go. If it's an unblockable special, even better. Now, Blade is like an AI Fiesta, basically. He's got unblockable special ones. You need to be hitting his block basically throughout the entire fight. And the only way to really safely get openings, if you're not paying attention, is to like hit his block, have him throw a heavy and counter the heavy, and then bait the special ones. He has destructive feedback, which means he stores damage over a period of time. And if he hits your block or anything, he can unleash all that damage on you. So it's pretty rough. It's a lot of just like pushing him back with hitting block and then, getting clean evades on his special one and finding openings. But he will eventually go down, and, technically any champion can take him. Terrax, it requires a lot of backdraft intercepting when he has rock field up, especially because he's more aggressive. You get some like dash vulnerability and also ebb and flow intercept, which gives you a passive fury. So doing that will get him down relatively quickly. Don't forget about throwing specials every 15 hits because it has special delivery. And also, if you can apply debuffs to him somehow, you will take less rock field damage. Dragon Man is just a menace of unblockable and unstoppable, and you can't parry him. Excuse me. He's got a lot of interesting nodes where he periodically goes unblockable. He has an unstoppable. So if you have an unstoppable counter, that will greatly help here. If you have like slow or something, just because like that's one thing that makes this very annoying if you can't deal with that. You can nullify or stagger, but it's not reliable because there's periods of the fight where he has like a mystic ward type thing going on. And basically just practice getting cornered and don't parry him because it'll put an armor break on him and you'll degen to death. So yeah, he's a really fun one if you don't have a counter or like Magneto or something. Now, Dormammu, technically anybody can take, but you are going to take a chunk of damage. So it's interesting that he's the first node on the second path. A lot of people are choosing to go this path because Dormammu is soloable, so you can like keep trying till you get the solo and then move on. He has a degen counter built in, especially when you have lower power. But I found like Dr. Doom is pretty much the perfect counter here. If you have power control and buff control because of Footloose, it's going to greatly help. Otherwise, you have to deal with Footloose, and you also need to deal with just like transferring the degeneration back to him. And just a note, don't bring in Spidey 99 or something, because being buff immune is bad because it has buffed up. He will be placing placebos on you, which is how you can get your buffs with any champion. But obviously, if you're buff immune, that's going to hurt. Bishop is mostly just an annoying bishop, but it has Hurt Locker, and you have to transfer this meltdown timer with a special. Otherwise, you'll take burst damage. You do need to be aggressive because it has like a shock tether on it. And obviously, if he gets shocked, it triggers some of his abilities, and you don't want that to happen. Basically, I would suggest if you have a tech champion, or you can always nail the special 2 decks, just push them to special 2s. If you happen to have an Incinerate immune, you can also bait special 1s, but it's basically a big bishop. It's not that bad. Crossbones is another sort of AI type fight. He needs to throw a lot of special ones because you can't damage him if he doesn't have enough Furies. And of course, it's very limiting because it has Bane and Biohazard. So you do need a bleed and poison immune. And also, you don't want to block because of Vital Strikes. It's going to do a lot of damage and regen him. So that's why the special 2 would be pretty bad, because most people just block that one. I've heard, I think Vega already did this path, and he let me know that Omega Mega Sentinel, if you're doing the robots, is really good here. I'll talk about that when we plan my team, because she'll just regen off of the bleed and poison. She's a great biohazard counter, and you just need to worry about Bane. It's going to hit really hard at the beginning. Overseer is almost impossible to solo, honestly, because he has encroaching stun, he's gaining powers and buffs, he's stealing your power with power alternator, and he's just big and beefy. He's got special concussions, so your abilities are going to fail, and retaliation damage is just going to hurt because at times your abilities are going to fail. So yeah, I don't really expect to solo this fight ever, unless if I had like Nick Fury maybe, but I'm not going to be bringing Nick Fury anywhere. So then we have our swap node, and the last half here, Craven starts unblockable, knock him down with a special, he goes unstoppable, so then you have to heavy counter to remove the unstoppable. With him, you want to try to only bait special 2. That's more of a Craven ability than anything else, because he, when he does special 1, then he gets the trap, and then you have to immediately throw a special, which some people can do really well, but I would just prefer sending him to special 2. Now, buff control is an interesting way to deal with this, but it has a gigantic return policy node, so you have to be very, very careful if you have buff control, especially if it's like random buff control, because you could accidentally send him red. And it does have Matador, which I think kind of helps, because if he gets to a special 1 and throws it, you immediately have a bar of power, which can help you cancel out the trap. So hopefully that makes sense. Scorpion isn't that bad if you play him a certain way. I think there was a little bit more of like a tipping scale thing with him, where you were trying to like throw heavies and specials and worry about this timer. But most people have found the easiest way to fight him is to just get to a special 3, hold it, and then just kill him with basic hits. If you're poison immune, this could help because you will be ticking down a little bit with poison, and he can, if you evade, you'll take some poison bursts and stuff like that. Additionally, I would recommend healing to full, because even if you do this strategy, you're going to take a 50% HP burst while you're holding the special 3. But the good news is you only take it 1 time, as long as you don't throw the special 3. So, as long as you can deal with that, you're going to be fine. Icarus, because he's Icarus, having a Mystic is going to greatly help. Mystics don't take the burst damage when he has 7 energizes. So if you can fit a Mystic, I think it's going to make it a lot easier. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, don't parry him because he goes unstoppable. Basically, you have to kind of just play him stun immune style. And what I remember about this fight is you have to bait a lot of heavies, counter the special 1 with your own heavy is really the way to play him. It takes a while. Having a Mystic will help, but it's sort of just like a real skill-based fight and not too bad. But you do need to just kind of like get used to the spacing on a special 1. And then Penny, I kind of joked, if you don't have Gallon or Hulkling, good luck, which is kind of true about this fight. Like you're just taking a lot of damage because of close encounters and just normal Penny stuff. If it has ticking time bomb, so if you parry too many times, you'll take damage. So you need to hit block in between. Fortunately, she's a champ that you want to be hitting the block on anyway. And stay close because of close encounters. You will regen a little bit. If you block the special 2, the passive regen will be on for part of the special, which means you don't take as much damage. So it's not that bad. But I would just recommend pushing her to special 2s and trying not to get power burns, and just get the shield down, chip away when you can, and just try not to die. And then finally, Nameless Thanos, big important note here. This is not the same one as in Gauntlet. He had some of the older nodes of one of the other Thanoses. This is the one that came out with the Avengers Infinity War quest, I believe. And first 5% is free. He has different phases. The way the phases work is he starts with these crazy abilities that you have to turn off, and anytime he throws a special in that phase, he gets them back. That's kind of how these bosses always work. So just know, like, you have to do something to cancel the ability, and then you can do damage. And he does have a damage cap, so stuff like using Gallon isn't going to work. Like, you can't do huge bursts of damage or gigantic critical hits or things like that. So at 95%, basically don't hit him. He's got some like crazy thorns, and he can also reflect your stuns. But if you use a special or a heavy, it will turn off this ability, and then you can do regular damage. So a lot of people want to build to a bar of power or so in the first 5%, and then just unleash that special. You can also heavy counter. At 65%, you get inverted controls. You can immediately run in after the cutscene and do medium, light, 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 light. Or whatever, 4 lights. And then I would recommend remembering that you have inverted controls, so your dash is going to be backwards. The special 2 dex is also going to be inverted, and watch out for the orange projectiles. Only some of them are real. Those are the ones you want to dex on, and then immediately counter with a light ending combo, and you should be fine. 40%, it's the same thing, only he is stun immune, so just keep that in mind. You can't parry anymore. And then the last 30% is not as bad as the original champion boss, but it is kind of bad because he's indestructible. You have to land intercepts after his unstoppable goes away, and then you can only do damage immediately in that short window after, but it is placing potent armor breaks on him. So if you can somehow manage to get to your 3 bars of power, you can like dash in and throw a special 3 while the armor breaks are down, and it's going to do a ton of damage. So yeah, surviving his special 3s requires landing intercepts. Having enough health to survive them is also important, so you may want to heal up in this last phase. It's a little annoying, but not as bad as some other stuff in the game. So those are all the nodes. Let's go ahead and plan my robot team right now. So I've decided that I'm going to be doing Dorm, and I've already decided that I'm going to start with Dr. Doom here. See, most people, as I said, are going to just use Hercules for these first 4 fights. But here's the thing, man. I have Hercules rank 3, Sig 20, and I don't really want to run recoil for this thing, so I don't really see him being that good except for Bishop. Like, I'm not going to bring him into a Bane and Biohazard fight. I guess he could do the Overseer fight too, but to me it sounds like using actual robots and Doom is better, so we'll start with Doom. Now for Bishop, again, I think a lot of people are thinking like Nimrod and Omega Sentinel are essential for this team. I'm actually going with Ultron for this one because I tested this out. Obviously, Doom cannot take this Bishop. I don't have Hercules. Using Nimrod against this Bishop is going to hurt because of all the shocks. He's got so much PI that you're going to really get hurt by the, what's it called? The feedback, or it's not feedback, but whatever, when he goes into overload and stuff, that's really going to hurt you. And then lastly, I think Ultron is just a great Bishop counter, and he has the healing built in. It should be pretty good. So I'm planning to do that. Hopefully you can get a solo. Now for Crossbones, I'm probably going to use Omega Sentinel. I may use Dragon Man though. Because I actually soloed with Dragon Man in the original, and I know eventually they're both going to be on my team, but as I mentioned, Vega reminded me that she gets the regen on the bleed and poison. I think that's going to be a safer counter here, so we'll have Ultron and OS to start the quest with Doom. And then for Overseer, I'm basically going to start with Doom and then use the rest of my team. I know Doom can't solo it, but until his power control disappears from the special concussions, he can actually do a lot of damage. So I'll be planning on using him to just chip down what I can. He'll probably die, and then I'll just use the rest of the team. As I said, Overseer is annoying because of the special concussion and the retaliation, but I don't believe that Ultron is going to have any abilities that fail per se, so he might actually be an interesting counter for that. The special concussion may not work on him, so even I'm gonna put Kill Doom and then try to use Ultron. I want to test if his functions aren't affected by the special concussion, because I think that might actually work really well. Now at this point, we're gonna swap in Dragon Man for Doom, because we don't want to have Doom on the team anymore, otherwise we won't get rewards. And then for Kraven, I'm probably going to use Dragon Man, mostly because he has a slow debuff so that you can deal with that unstoppable. Also, Mystic Dispersion, I'll be getting a little bit extra power. I'll have ability to, although it has Matador, so I forget that. But either way, having Dragon Man, able to corner him, having specials because of Matador and slow, I think is going to be pretty good. And he doesn't have a nullify like other mystics, so it's not going to trigger return policy. So that sounds pretty good to me. For this one, I'm going to use Omega Sentinel. I actually have a solo video of this with her. She was the one I used in the actual quest and in the actual boss rush of this version of Eternity of Pain. So I think she's going to be quite good. For Icarus, I'm going to use Dragon Man again. Like I said, he's he's a mystic, so he will not be taking all that damage. I'm pretty comfortable with his animations in terms of landing heavies after the special one, and hopefully we can get him cornered. And the issue, of course, is that he's incinerate immune, and so we don't want to be throwing our special 2s, but I could see, throwing special 3s, using the unstoppable to give myself some openings, throwing some special 1s. It should be a good time. And then for this one, I'm just going to write team because I don't really know how I'm going to approach this fight yet. Having 2 tech champions and a mystic, and she's incinerate immune, it's not going to be pretty. So this is probably going to be the ugliest one. And then obviously for Thanos, we're going to do team as well. So anyway, I hope this guide is helpful. Like I said, if you want to see the real deal, check out some of the streams of some of the people actually doing it. I highly recommend watching videos of these fights, whether it's mine or some other people, because it really does give you the full picture. And yeah, that's where we are today. Check out the spreadsheet in the links. If you found any mistakes that I made, because I did make this in less than like 12 hours, basically, if you find anything that you would rather me change in these little descriptions, I will absolutely read the feedback and make some changes as needed. But let me know, are you going into this thing? Are you going to be tackling it on the first day like some real crazy people? Are you trying to get it done in the first month? Are you like, no, thank you, I don't care about rank 5s? I'd love to hear your opinion, what you think of this quest, and if you think you'll be using my planning sheet. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for checking it out, and I'll catch you in the next one.